Hey guys, my name's Rob Blight. I make videos about wildlife photography, cameras, gear, things like that. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the DJI Osmo Pocket and whether you can use this as an action camera. In my case, I've been using it for running, and I've been using the Mount, which released recently. When you get it right, this is quite amazing, the footage it puts out. Particularly in 4K 60, the footage really does look very, very nice. But there are a few things I had to do to get my footage to come out this smooth. Let's get into it. So when I first got this Osmo Pocket, I knew that I wanted to try it out on a run just to see how the footage looked. But at the time the mount wasn't out yet, so my only option really was to just hold it in my hand as I was running. And this actually works pretty well. I'll show some footage of how it looks. But the main problem with doing it this way is it's just a bit annoying to have it always in your hand. It is kind of cool to be able to look to the side. You can, if you're going past a cool landscape or building or something, you can just hold it out to the side and then show what you're running past. I really just wanted to use it with like a GoPro chest strap so that I could have it mounted on my chest during my runs and then just get good footage and not have to worry about using like a head-mounted camera like you would for a GoPro or something like that. I almost missed a really important point, so let me just cover this quickly. If you plan to use this gimbal handheld, there's not really a good way of ensuring that it always tracks straight forward. So what tends to happen is it'll drift off to the side and the path that's in front of you will no longer stay in the center. This is just the result of your hands not really facing forward, and the screen is so small and hard to look at while you're running that it's kind of inevitable. And so this was the other thing that led me onto a chest strap, because I knew that it would face forward the whole time. So this is the actual mount. The thing that just doesn't really make sense to me is where they chose to put the actual GoPro mount, which is on the back. The Osmo Pocket only goes in this one way, and it's with the screen facing you. I'll just put it in to show you. So you can see here the screen is at the front, right? So if this is mounted on your chest, so here's the mount, here's the screen, you can only put it in that way round. It means that by default the gimbal faces you instead of facing forward. So you have to put it in, I guess what would be its kind of portrait mode, where the lens turns around and faces you. It means that when you're actually setting up the gimbal and trying to get a straight view and the right angle and just make sure that you can basically see what it's filming, you can't really do that. You kind of have to strain down awkwardly or like pull the chest strap up. Also, having the screen on the front, when you're recording, the screen is on, so it makes it blatantly obvious to everyone that you're recording video as you run past them, which I guess isn't really a big deal, but you know, it's just, why have it on the front? It just doesn't make that much sense to me. Anytime you recenter the gimbal, it puts the horizon dead center in the frame, which sounds pretty reasonable for running, right? When you've got it mounted on your chest, it's the other way round. So you have to spin the camera around so that it's facing the other way than it normally does. The trouble with this is when you recenter it, instead of locking to the horizon like it normally does in the dead center of the frame, it actually, whatever angle you have it mounted at, it will align at 90 degrees to that angle instead of locking to the horizon like it would do normally. So you can see why this would be a problem for running, right? Because you may want to have the horizon in the center of the frame, or in my case I prefer to have it about 2/3 up the frame. I don't know, it just doesn't make much sense having the screen at the front when you're using it like this as a running cam. But with a bit of setup, you can still use it this way and get good results. This piece, this was the game changer for me. So it comes, I think it was in like a helmet head mount kit or something. They're pretty cheap, about, I think I paid about £8 for it on Amazon. I'll put a link down below in the description. And this curved piece essentially fixes the problem, because it goes on the back like so. So you see that? Now your mounting point is on the bottom. This is ideal because now here's your chest strap now it mounts like this, and the screen is now facing you, and you can angle it like this. So for me, this piece is essential basically when you're using this as a running camera. It means that the screen is facing you, and now it's in its standard mode, and it will lock to the horizon perfectly when you recenter it. Oh, and yeah, this is the GoPro strap, which sort of goes around you, mounts to your chest like so. And one of the reasons this is so good is because of the way it can tilt up and down. Now you can tilt it down a bit, access the screen, do all your setup, make sure the camera is at the exact angle you want. What I like to do is start off by centering the gimbal so the horizon is dead center, and then aim it down slightly so that the horizon line is about 2/3 up the frame. I think this gives a slightly better sense of speed, so I like to do it that way. And because the screen is facing you, you can now actually see what you're doing and make sure that you've got the right angle. It also means that if you need to make adjustments, things like that, it's easy to do because you can see the screen. Makes sense, right? And then once you've done that, you hit record, tilt it back up to this position, and it's nice and tight to your body. So I'm going to talk about some of the times I went out running and some of the problems I had and some of the successes I had. This includes the first few times when I went out. I had it chest mounted, but I didn't use the adapter because I didn't have it at that point, so the screen was facing outwards, and some of the problems that caused. So for my first attempt, I just went on like a really casual 5k run. I kept changing to different modes through the run to see what would work and what would look good. And for some reason I thought that because it was mounted to my chest, I'd be able to use FPV and it would give a nice dynamic kind of recording. That's not the case. Do not use FPV for running. It's just not smooth enough. I'm not really sure what they intended for this mode, but just don't use it for running. You want to use follow or tilt locked. I think tilt locked is the safest option because with follow you can have some issues with it not lining up to the horizon correctly or it pointing too far down. But you absolutely must use slow follow, not fast follow. And it's kind of confusing because when you actually go into the menu, there's like the icon for fast follow is like a man running with like speed lines behind him. So it's kind of contradictory because you're using it for running, so you'd think that's the mode you'd want to use. But you actually want it to be in the other mode, slow follow, for running. Otherwise, the footage looks like this. Well, I'll put some up on the screen now. It just has too much side-to-side movement from like chest rotation while you're running. And I would recommend using tilt locked the most. And you can use follow, but you have to be careful because if you don't get the horizon quite right, it may start to drift downwards or drift upwards and you'll end up with an angle that you're not quite expecting. But at least if you have this accessory, you can see the screen. For the second run I went on, I actually went on a park run. They're just these local runs that you do. They're run by volunteers. It's pretty cool. So I got good footage during this run for the most part. I used tilt locked slow follow. At this point I still didn't have the adapter, so I was using it with the screen facing outwards, but nonetheless I was able to get good footage. I'd say the main problem with this footage is very humid that day, kind of foggy, and it was drizzling. After a while there started to be a few tiny little spots of rain on the lens, and because of this most of the footage ended up looking quite hazy. But I think you'll have the same issues with the GoPro as well, so I'm not really sure of a good solution at the moment. So I think with this footage as well, you can start to see some of the advantages of having it mounted to your chest. This is kind of why I wanted to do it this way, because you're a bit lower to the ground, and when you look at the footage, it feels like you're more within a group of people running, rather than being sort of above everyone else like you would be with a typical head-mounted camera. And the footage is impressively smooth. I haven't seen anything quite like this coming out of, say, a GoPro. So then my third set of footage, I went for an interval run along a canal near me, and there was a problem with this footage because I accidentally set it to fast follow, so all the footage looks like this, and it's pretty annoying because the lighting was great that day. There was this kind of cool haze in the distance, and I think the footage would have looked great if I hadn't messed up and set it to that mode. So then my fourth run I went out with it again, and at this point I still didn't have the adapter. And this time I did manage to pretty much nail all the settings. The whole run looked good, and I think this might be some of the best footage so far. And I guess the trouble with this footage is just bad lighting. It was pretty harsh that day, and it does show some dynamic range problems with the Osmo Pocket. You can definitely see some clipping in the highlights at times in the sky. But for the most part, I still think the footage looks great, so I'm not too worried about it. It's just, yeah, if the lighting's harsh, you're just probably going to get a few clipped highlights. There's not much we can do about that. And then, since getting the adapter, I've been on a few more runs. I've done another park run with the adapter, so I was finally able to have the screen facing me. And I think the footage on this run looks great. You do get a pretty good sense of speed and being in a big group of people all running together, so I really like that about it. And yeah, this adapter definitely makes all the difference. It makes it so much easier to set up. You're not worrying constantly that your shot is framed badly or anything like that. And even while running, you can loosen it and check the footage as you go if you need to. So yeah, basically, highly recommend this adapter. Oh yeah, I wanted to just touch on sound quality. If you're in an area with no wind, it can be quite impressive. See here at the start of my run, the audio is quite nice. You can hear everything quite clearly.
3, 2, 1, go! Well, I'm concentrating. Come on, Koji!
The trouble is, as soon as you have a bit of wind, you do start getting a kind of muffled wind noise. If audio is particularly important to you, you'll need to use some kind of external mic with a fluffy wind suppressor type thing. Maybe use something like one of these lav mics. And I would have done this. The trouble is, the adapter to mount an external microphone isn't out yet, so I haven't been able to try it. Oh yeah, so with regards to battery life, in my experience from a full charge, you can expect the battery to last between an hour and a half and 2 hours. So if your run or activity is approaching or longer than 2 hours, you might want to bring like a portable battery pack or something that you can plug into it while you're running, and I believe it will record and charge at the same time. However, I haven't tried this as all of my runs have been way less than 2 hours. And I haven't noticed a big difference between using different resolutions and frame rates and battery life. My gut feeling is that the higher frame rates and higher resolutions do use up the battery a bit faster, but it's not like super significant. I think you'll be able to go for at least an hour and a half on any of those modes. Also, when you switch between different resolutions and frame rates, the size of your video files will definitely increase. That is very noticeable. So make sure you have a big enough memory card. I'm using a 128 gig micro SD card, and I've been able to record sort of an hour to an hour and a half runs on 1080-60 with no problems. They usually come out to about, I don't have the figures on hand right now as I'm recording this video, but I will insert a screenshot that shows some of the values of different resolutions and frame rates and how many gigabytes they use per hour, minute. Anyway, here it is. So after filming this video, I realized that there were a few more points that I wanted to go over, so I'll just cover these next 3 points quickly. I went for a night run, and I thought it'd be interesting to show the footage from that and give a few thoughts. For the most part, I think this footage looks pretty good. It's similar to how it looked to my eyes. Once you go into a much darker area, it just becomes a bit too dark and you can't really see anything. But if you're in a city which is lit with street lights, it's not too bad. Here I'm using a head torch and you can barely see anything. This is the difference between 1080 and 4K. I would say that they're about the same, but the 4K does look a little bit better because the noise is finer grained. After I recorded most of this footage, DJI did release an update for the Osmo Pocket, with the Pro features and the D-Cine-like color profile. And the manual mode features are really good actually. On an overcast day, I would recommend setting the white balance manually to cloudy, and that way it'll give you a consistent white balance through the whole run. I would say that the footage looks pretty nice. It reminds me of like a raw photo, kind of full of potential for editing. And it definitely holds the highlight clipping down a bit. I think you'll still get some clipping in the sky, but it's nowhere near as severe as it is in the standard profile. So if you're planning to edit the footage, then yeah, absolutely shoot the D-Cine-like. It's really nice, especially in 4K. Yeah, so this Wobble Bug, if you look at the footage, you'll see what I mean. The first few times I noticed this, I thought that I was just maybe accidentally hitting the gimbal with my hand and causing it to freak out. But then it started happening over and over again, and it happened about at least 3 or 4 times during this park run. And I eventually noticed a pattern. When you record a run, you don't just record in one file. The run gets split up into, say, 6-minute chunks. And I noticed that this bug always happened within the first 20 seconds to a minute. It does clear itself up after about 20 seconds. It is a problem with the gimbal, and I'm not sure why it happens. Maybe we'll get a firmware update. I hope DJI fixes it. And while we're on the subject of bugs, I did have maybe a more severe version of this bug. It was actually on my night run, right at the start of this run. The gimbal just basically locked up on both axes, and then after about a minute, the whole Osmo Pocket just shut down and stopped recording. And then about 5 or 10 minutes later into my run, I realized and then had to restart it. It only happened once, but this was pretty annoying. I don't know, I guess it's just a glitch, but still pretty annoying that it happened. But yeah, I think that about does it. I think we're approaching the end of this video. If you're using the Osmo Pocket for running, please link me to your videos. I'd love to see what footage other people are able to get. Yeah, so if you have any tips or advice that I didn't cover in this video, please leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you guys are doing to improve the look of the footage even further. And if you like this video, please click like. It does make a difference. Please subscribe. Some of the other types of videos I make are wildlife photography videos where I go out into nature and take you guys along with me. And I also do some tech videos and camera reviews, things like that.